Right, I've been called a YouTube cycling vlogging sellout. No, I'm joking, I don't think I have been. That was the term that was used on the Chris Miller cycling video that went up last night, and it was with a conversation with Jesse Coyle. The two lads are from down under, and I was mentioned right at the end of this video. I'll link it down below so you can go and watch that clip before you watch this. So go and watch that now. Ready? Done? Okay, we'll carry on. And what they talk about is how brands work with sort of single influencers or YouTubers or vloggers, and how like what's happening with the whole like brand exposure thing, and how we can, well, you've watched the video so I don't need to explain it. But when I was mentioned in the video, I had a bit of a surprise, and because I know that a lot of people who watch my channel enjoy the sort of heart-to-heart stuff, then I thought now's a good time for me to make like not a reaction, but like, here's my 50 pence I'm putting into this conversation. So I've always had a difficult time sort of accepting the content creator title. I've always seen myself as an athlete first and foremost, because I've always raced at that level, and I've always conducted myself that way. But the content creating side has always been like something not as an afterthought, because it's obviously come a long way and I've stayed somewhat dedicated to it. But what I would say is when you look at my channel versus others, it's a bit of a mishmash. Like, there's a bit of like fooling around, there's a bit of like entertainment, education. There could be reviews, but not all the time. And then there's also like me being able to do performance stuff. And when I was mentioned in the same breath almost as Francis Kidd, you know, there is no comparison. The dude's on over 200,000 subscribers. But I've spoken to Francis before, and there is like a difference in that I'm someone that still chases that performance aspect, you know, in terms of like climbing and things like that. Like, not many people would chase stuff like that, but I am a little bit. So the conversations I've had with the brands I've worked with, we've always like spoken about how drone shots, like great B-roll, cinematic, all this kind of stuff is great, but if it's used too much, it sort of detracts from, I guess, the person who's behind it all. I've created this YouTube channel that is somewhat like a documentary, an ongoing documentary of what I do day to day and how I achieve what I achieve, and hopefully people either see it as inspiration. They see there is a place for the polished stuff, but they like the way that it just comes across as natural with YouTube vloggers, and it's less presented and more just like. So this conversation has actually come at a good time, because Ribble Weldtite, one of the most like successful teams in the UK at elite pro level, is no longer competing as of next year. When you support a team as a sponsor, there is a lot riding on that. You've got to give like every rider at least 2 bikes. If you want to do it properly, you've got to give them 2 bikes. That's one to train on, one to race on, and to swap back and forth. You also have to pay for like, you know, hotels, riders' race licenses, sometimes riders' race entries, flights, if they're going to race outside of the UK, which I was lucky enough to do, and also like paying riders' wages. And sometimes one of those things consumes more money than others, but then that takes more money away from the team, which then can't afford to race, and it's like this endless cycle of like. The thing is, we're supporting like an individual like Kidd and myself. I'll use those 2 examples because, you know, we were mentioned in the video, but like, you know, we're individuals, and we, you know, yes, we may want to go out and do this event, or we might want to, you know, do a multi-day backpacking event in the UK, but we're just one individual who needs like 1 to 3 bikes or whatever. So it's much less of a strain on the brands, but also it's something where they can get involved with just one person a lot easier. There's less sort of, you call it less contracts involved, but there's certainly less of that labor involved, but they do get a heck of a lot back. Okay, so the bit that jumped out to me in the conversation with Chris and Jesse was the bit about like, you know, oh, you get a bike and you get money, so like what do you do with it, or like, you know, how does that work? Like, is it a lot of money, or like, you know, I'm kind of going a bit deep now, but like, I can only speak for myself, but I don't actually get any money from the brands I work with, at least not directly. So I don't get like the bike and, you know, say, you know, 10 grand. So I'm not actually supported by Factor bikes. I'm supported by Velo. They stock and sell Factor bikes in the UK. The only independent place to sell them, to buy them in the UK. That is more than just a place to buy bikes. That is a place for bike fits, testing, all the rest of it. Drink good coffee as well. But yeah, it's an experience rather than just buying a bike. So I know this is the really important bit with the content creating side of things. So it's not my full-time job, technically. Like, I always say that riding my bike is my full-time job. So then you say, well, what pays that? Well, what pays that is the coaching services that I do. And I've been doing it for a good few number of years now, ever since I was racing at an elite level in the UK, and I was earning very little from racing. Like, I was at the lower end of the pecking order, and I was earning like £5,000 a year, which obviously isn't enough. Even though I'm living at home with my parents, it's just not enough money. So I started doing that, and that has grown over the years through YouTube, as one of the biggest reasons probably, and also through my exploits, you know, of racing and performance and everything else. So that's taking things. So that is my main source of income. Now that pays for my cycling, that pays for, like, you know, day-to-day things. But then the YouTube side of things, the revenue always fluctuates. So for me, it's like between £300 and £500 a month, which either goes back into YouTube or back into, like, you know, traveling to races, the fuel, the hotels, all this sort of stuff. Like, I use it to be able to do the YouTube stuff, basically. So I like the way that me working with brands and building relationships actually equals opportunities, and equals, it opens up avenues where you can go out and you can do things that you may not have been able to do without that relationship. You know, I'm sitting on 16,000 subscribers, and that's the revenue, and the growth is like 200 subscribers a month. Like, I don't do any, like, there's no viral content. Like, most of my content is just like this. So there's nothing to propel it to like greatness and, like, you know, really push the ceiling, unless I was to do something like cyclist. And that's something that I want to do more of, because that is the position I'm in as an athlete, is to be able to achieve those things. So that's what I want to double down on in the coming years while I've still got the capabilities. And how that works is, like, there's so many different ways that actually work. So my best example is this year, like, Croatia and Mallorca. So let's use Croatia as an example. Like, Mallorca with the cyclist, like, most people know the story with that, but like the recent trip to Croatia, I actually formed a good relationship with Alp Cycles, who are a tour operator. They're based out in south of France. So I created a relationship with them through the haute route, and I went down to them. I flew down to them, paid for the flights myself, but all of the travel and the hospitality and the you know, the hotel and the event was all paid for. So I labeled all that paid promotion on YouTube, because I didn't pay for any of it. Paid for the flights, but that was it. And that relationship has opened up other avenues now for me to be able to do things. Like, I could go out to do, you know, Tour de Mont Blanc, or like I could go and do, you know, a KOM on like Alpe d'Huez with their support. And there's lots of ways in which, you know, not necessarily needing money, although money does come into it at some point, but there's other ways of creating, you know, opportunities through people that you meet in life. And I feel like, you know, it takes a long time to get to that place, but once you get there, you realize, like, this is really fun, like building relationships and like building possibilities with people and building ideas. Because as much as, like, you know, it all ties into each other. Like, me going out to Croatia, I told Velo and Factor, I said, look, I'm going out there making content, like, I'm just vlogging out there, but people are going to know that I'm on a Factor, and they're like, oh, that's going to be cool, because like we don't have much footage from Croatia. Like, we've never had someone who's been riding there, so like, you're on the bike and you're creating that for them. You send them a reel, you post a reel, you post a video, you do a blog post on what it's like to create in Croatia. There's like so many opportunities, literally like endless amounts of content you could do as an individual. So I think that's why I probably rambled a bit, but I hope to answer this in less than 50, or not answer this, but I hope to add context in less than 15 minutes. So a bit of context about the whole chat. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I really appreciate that the guys talk about that in their video as well. So keep up the good work, guys, and I will see you in the next video.